All right, great. So good afternoon again, everyone. Welcome to our hydroponics production training workshop. My name is Rakesh. I would be your presenter for this afternoon. I am also the managing director of Aquatic Solutions. All right, so all of you all would have most likely seen the ad directly. So you would have a basic idea of some of the things that we would be covering in today's session, right? I found it important that, we host this workshop so that persons can be properly sensitized into hydroponics, right? Because while information is freely available, I mean, if you go online on YouTube, Google, you go on some of those AI platforms and you type in hydroponics, or you type in hydroponics in the Caribbean, you will be bombarded with a lot of information. In addition to that, if you go on some of those local farmer groups, regional farmer groups, you will see a lot of discussions about hydroponics. And what we would have noticed, like over the past couple years, but mostly over the past couple months, is that there's a lot of misleading information that is available, right? Not misleading, not that the information is, how could I say it, incorrect, but misleading in that much of what is being shared and discussed is not relevant for us here in the Caribbean. Yeah, and that has a significant impact when it comes to when we decide to set up hydroponic systems or get into hydroponics production. In terms of the productivity, how the systems function, the kind of results that we get, etc. Yeah. So doing hydroponics in other countries, like in those temperate countries, versus hydroponics in Trinidad and in the Caribbean, there's a difference, right? Our climate has a huge role to play in how well certain systems perform. In addition to that, there are certain alterations that we need to make to systems so that it could function effectively on our climate and conditions, right? Like just like most other types of farming systems, there would be farmers who have successes in hydroponics and some that may not, right? It's not that for those who would not really achieve the kind of success that they would have anticipated, it's not that hydroponics don't work. But many times, or a lot of the times, is a situation where the person doesn't really have the adequate information or knowledge on how to make it work, right? Because hydroponics, of course, is a science, but it's a science where once you apply it properly, you will get predictable results. Another major reason why a lot of persons are not very successful with hydroponics as well, it all comes back down to like system design and how we basically tailor our systems for our climate and conditions. So a lot of the work that I would have done in the past with hydroponics would have been to optimize on system designs, right? All the major system designs, which we will cover shortly when we get into the presentation. So things like drip-to-way systems, NFT systems, deep water culture systems, flood and drain systems, we would have worked with these systems directly at a much higher level than like an average farmer. So I'm completing a PhD at UE, where my work is around studying these systems, in addition to a lot of other things as well, right? This is just part of it, right? Studying these systems and basically figuring out the engineering coupled with the plant production part and how to kind of get these systems working the way that they're supposed to work for us here. Again, if you go online, you'd see systems working beautifully internationally, right? And whatever works there could also work here, but of course it will come down to really customizing the systems to suit our individual needs. Yeah. So why hydroponics, right? Now, this is a real good question, right? Why do hydroponics? I mean, it may be obvious for many, but for others, it's not that obvious. But in general, right, if we have unlimited land, we have good weather patterns, like every single day, 365 days a year, good fertility in our soil, no pest and disease, no major changes in the weather patterns like erratic rainfall, that type of thing, we wouldn't really need hydroponics, right? Because the soil is capable of producing crops and producing crops well. However, the reality is we don't have access to proper arable land, right? Pest and disease has become very problematic for traditional agriculture. And with global climate change, the weather patterns has become very erratic, right? So I mean, when we hear things like climate change, right, the initial thing that we would usually think about is in those temperate countries, like, all right, Rakesh, well, we do have snow here, we do have summer, we do have that type of thing. So, the climate is fairly stable in that we just get dry season and wet and rainy season. But if you notice over the past couple months to the past couple years, what has happened is that the weather patterns has become very erratic. When we supposed to get rainfall, we get sun. When we supposed to get sun, we get rain. When rain come in, it pouring. When sun come out, it blazing hot. And these things are having significant negative impacts on traditional ways of growing crops. Yeah. So with hydroponics, it's regarded as a climate smart technology in that it is affected very little by extremes and variations in weather conditions. So we can utilize these systems to basically grow crops year round, right, without any major issues, regardless of how the weather basically how it behaves. Right. In addition to that, hydroponics is soilless. We don't need soil, right? We don't need to have arable land. In fact, hydroponic systems can be easily incorporated in your balconies, even indoors as well, to utilize and grow lights. And I'll show you some projects that we did with indoor systems, etc. Right. So you'll have an idea of the true potential of hydroponic growing. In addition to that, pest and disease is a major issue right now. And like I always try to explain this to clients, right? Or anybody interested in these growing techniques. When people go to markets and they purchase vegetables and you think you're eating healthy, like eating green is no longer equivalent to eating healthy. The kind of pest and disease that traditional farmers are exposed to now, right? They have to take extreme measures and the sort of controls that they would typically utilize in terms of pest control, other types of controls like for fungus and that type of thing. And the pesticides becoming more and more toxic. And unfortunately, when these things are applied to plants, we indirectly consume it, right? So excessive pesticide use is becoming extremely prevalent within Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean. And we need to be mindful of that. Because hydroponics, again, it grows crops out of soil and it grows it in a more controlled environment, we eliminate almost 90% of pest and disease, right? Almost 90% of pest and disease. So which means we grow crops a lot healthier. And for the 10% plus that may affect our crops, we could easily utilize biological control, we could utilize biopesticides, the safer stuff that don't need to be very toxic. So just utilizing hydroponics, we could grow crops a lot healthier. And this goes well for us who want to start up home gardening, right? You notice on the questionnaire that I would have asked, I asked those of you all who were interested in this thing as a commercial venture or, like for home systems. And I was glad to see a lot of persons said home systems, because I believe everybody should start up a small system at the home so that you can at least grow crops for yourself. You don't have to grow every single thing that you eat, but you can start somewhere. Yeah. So again, hydroponics, why hydroponics? There's global and regional challenges with traditional agriculture, right? So according to the FAO, right, which is the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, they are a big organization, they're based in Rome, and they do a lot of work with food security and that type of thing around the world, right? And they have a special focus for us here in the Caribbean. And basically their global projection is that the population in the world is going to increase by 2 billion people by the year 2050, right? So what does that mean for us, right? You might say, Rakesh, well, I mean, that's global population. We here in Trinidad, we here in the Caribbean, we in Guyana, like, it's not global, we're regional. But the thing about it is, think back on our food import bill, right? We import in Trinidad, for instance, in excess of $6 billion, right, in food every single year. If anything was to happen in terms of a shortage in supply, anything to disrupt that globally, we're going to be directly, immediately affected locally. So we need to produce food. We need to produce food consistently and in the quantities that we need as well too, right? In addition to that, right, with our growing global population, we need to feed more people, right? But what estimates have shown is that the amount of land that we have available to grow crops will only increase by about 4% more. So think about it. 2 billion more people 4% alone that land that we're going to have available for crop cultivation. And the reason being, land are really expanding. And while countries develop, while the population is increasing, there is increasing need and uses that land needs to be put into. Unfortunately, agriculture is not the major reason or the major purpose, right? Land needs to go into housing, roads, developments, etc., etc. So in Trinidad, I mean, I can talk from a Trinidad context because this is where I'm from, right? Our land, we have no proper land use planning. So the best fertile lands are not really put towards agriculture. It's put into whatever is best, like, I mean, it's put into everything else, and then this figure agriculture out after. And a lot of the times, farmers end up, they get land. It's like different programs that giving them land and stuff like that. But when they get the land, it clay, it retaining a lot of water. It kind of sandy. It don't have the nutrient. So even the land needs to be a particular way or a particular type. That soil needs to be of a good quality to be able to grow a range of crops. All right. So again, just having land is not good enough. All right. I mean, you drive down the highway in Trinidad from north to south, there's land left and right. But those lands, most of it is not suited for normal crops. Yeah, this was utilized for things like sugarcane and that type of thing. So again, this land thing is a serious problem. And we in the Caribbean, we are known as Caribbean small island development states. Small islands, land is now the biggest asset. So with systems like hydroponics, we could utilize any growing space. I've even done projects for clients on rooftops, right? Where they're utilizing, like in the middle of Shogunas and those big buildings, like in Price Club Supermarket, I've done a system on the roof there. And so these systems, again, could be deployed almost anywhere. And again, that adds potential for us, yeah, who don't have much land. For those of you who want to get into business, traditionally, you would have needed acres of land to be able to grow crops to a significant amount that you could be able to make a decent profit from. I ain't talking about $4,000-$5,000 a month. I'm talking about good profit, right? But with hydroponics, it's about 70% more efficient with space. So because of that, we could have small parcels of land and we could grow a lot of crops. So we could become profitable and we could use this as a business venture. For the small home grower, you don't need much space in your yard either. You could build a simple system, you could set it up, and you could grow crops. If you're living in a concrete jungle, no problem, even better. Yeah? So again, world population going to estimate to be increased by about 9.1 billion people by 2050. And the demand for food is going to go up by about 70% more. Yeah. Climate change, well, we spoke about that, right? Irregular weather patterns, that type of thing. Storms and stuff becoming more intensive as well too. I know our Caribbean counterparts, because Trinidad is the most suddenly in the Caribbean islands, we kind of just outside of the hurricane belt, right? But hurricanes and storms becoming more severe. And when these things pass through the small islands, they devastate agriculture. It takes a long while for the soil to even become like come back to the state it was before that it could sustain crop production, right? With hydroponics, we could design the systems. I mean, with a shutdown during the storm, secure it properly, and just start back again. Those are options that you have as well too. Right, so these are local situations. These are some clippings that I took from the local newspapers, right? And the reason why I decided to share this is because this is right close to where I live. My grandparents actually farmed in this land in the bottom where you see, and like my grandparents and my dad, right? That's what we call the Pudai Lagoon in Pinal. And the reason why I'm sharing this, right, is because of the fact that we met with those farmers and we had like a farmer engagement with them. And what they indicated is that in the past, when they usually plant the crops, so they plant the crops for a certain period of the year, right? During the dry season. But they said during the dry season, they would have been able to grow the crops like normal, everything grown, full production. They grow, they harvest, they sell, they make the money, right? But in the past couple years, right, what they realize is that every year now, even during the dry season, they get flooded out, right? They said in the past that might happen once every 5 to 10 years. They will get rain to that extent during the dry season time. Now, it has shifted completely. And again, these are the effects of climate change, right? So right now in the South Oropouge River Drainage Basin, which incorporates this area, there's a project that's ongoing with respect to getting farmers engaged with hydroponics, and that's running through the Ministry of Planning and Development. Yeah. So there's a big project down there right now, engaging farmers in these technologies so that they could be able to avert some of the, the challenges that they have with flooding and stuff like that. So these things are issues for us, yeah? Declining arable land, well, again, the soil that we plant on, if we keep planting on the same parcel of land over and over, what happens is that the soil becomes depleted. Not just depleted of nutrients, but the soil structure, the ability to retain moisture and nutrients, etc., goes down. And we lose it forever. Like it takes a long while for that soil to be able to regenerate itself. So topsoil, arable land is a kind of non-renewable resource if you go to think about it that way. So even the land that we have right now becoming less and less productive. So again, hydroponics is a solution for these things. Right, so these are some photos of proper soil, right, and crops that were grown from it. So these are all my photos, by the way. So I also do like traditional agriculture and stuff as well. Do research into it also. So I just giving you an idea what good arable landers look like. Remember, I started the presentation by saying, if we had real good soil, we had unlimited supply, no pests and disease, by all means, we don't need hydroponics. But the fact is, we do have soil that will give us this type of crops everywhere. Right, it's only in certain areas we will have arable land like this. So we really need to utilize, these technologies and incorporate it to some extent. So again, hydroponics is soilless growing, right? It's the cultivation of plants without soil. It combines two Greek words, hydro meaning water and ponos meaning labor. So basically it means working with water. Of course, the term has been expanded in recent times because of the fact that it now incorporates other systems of growing that is not 100% water-based. So some of you may or may not have heard of what we call a drip-to-waste type hydroponic system. Right, so that type of system, we will cover it shortly, is one of the newer in historic times, is one of the newer methods of hydroponics, right? It's not a complete water-based system, but it's still regarded as hydroponics. Yeah. So again, hydroponics is an ancient practice. It wasn't just developed like a couple years ago. This has been refined over decades. Yeah. So these are actual like paintings and drawings and stuff that they had depicting like ancient ways of growing plants without soil, right? By planting it in these floating mats that floats on water where you have like nutrients in it. And the nutrients, of course, comes from like aquatic organisms like fish and that type of thing. But it's still hydroponics because it's more or less soilless growing to a certain extent. Over time, this has been refined to modern day hydroponics, which you will see some of the systems and designs that we will go through shortly. Yeah. So again, advantages of hydroponics. It's efficient, it's fast growing, more crops in less space. Actually have a 75% smaller footprint, right? So anybody can think about why hydroponics is more fast growing. Anybody could just unmute and just tell me why I think it's more fast growing. Anybody?
You're getting a constant supply of nutrients.
Constant supply of nutrients, correct. That's one major point. Where's the other reason? Apart from nutrients.
For the specific types of plants?
Sorry?
You can control the types of nutrients or the amount of nutrients required by specific crops.
Correct, right? So they could control the nutrients, the type of nutrients, they could tailor make the nutrients to suit the crops. So crop science has basically told us everything certain types of crops need. And we could now formulate a nutrient solution specific to that. So it's like giving it the best nutrition possible. So it grows in the best fashion, right? Let me see if somebody messaged here. Yeah, direct availability of nutrients, direct supply to the roots, right? Now, nutrients is one major part, right? But think about it. If you're in a room, right, let me say in an office space, and you have like, it's a small area, but it have a whole set of little cubicles inside of there, and it's full of all your coworkers, and the air conditioning unit goes down, and the windows can't open. What has happened? The room gets started heat up, you get started sweat, you get started feel uncomfortable. You wouldn't be able to perform the same way you performed before because you're out of your optimum working environment, right? Soil is a very hostile environment for plants. Soil is not conducive for plant growth, right? In soil, we have pests and disease. We have disease, we have insect pests, we have organisms attacking the roots of plants. In addition to that, the structure of soil can either retain too much water, it could dry out too fast. So if the sun comes out very hot and the soil becomes very dry, what happens? The plant lacks water, so you notice it starts to wilt, right? If too much rain comes out and the soil becomes waterlogged, it still wilts. You see, all these periods where the plant goes out of its optimum, right? These are periods where it kicks back on the growth rate of crops. In hydroponics, apart from tailoring the nutrient solution, we also tailor the growing environment. And that has a huge role to play. So that is why when you put something in a hydroponic system, it grows way faster. So like many people say, hey, Rakesh, I like hydroponics are sketchy to me because of the fact that I see people growing crops in 3 weeks, 4 weeks when it's supposed, like lettuce pak choy, when it's supposed to be harvested in about 6 weeks time. And you know the question I always ask them, I was like, why it's supposed to be harvested in 6 weeks time? I said, let me tell you something. What hydroponics does is really give the plant a holistic environment of best conditions. So the plant grows way faster and it grows way bigger. It's not that the nutrients in hydroponics, it's some kind of magical nutrients and it makes the plant leaves get bigger. It makes it get way greener than any soil and people think that is synthetic and it's nothing to do with that, It's just the fact that you're just giving it the best of the best environmental conditions, optimum water, optimum nutrients, and you're also keeping it in an environment that's relatively free of pest and disease, right? So root diseases, them kind of thing, you're restricting all of that. And you have better control as well too. So in case you even notice something going wrong, you could directly control that immediately. In soil, right? I don't know how much of you will ever plant a home garden, right? Or doing commercial agriculture. I would assume many of you all doing that. Well, some of you all here, right? When you plant something in the ground, you realize it's a kind of open situation, right? So many times you would notice the leaf getting a little yellow. So what you go do? You go buy a little blue corn, you buy a little 2020, you come out, you apply a little fertilizer in the soil. If you find kind of you come here, add a little bit of. The thing about it is, we can't, unless we do elaborate testing, we can't say what the soil nutritional composition is like. So many times we become very reactive. We become very reactive when it is dealing with
Excuse me,
plants in
can
the
you
soil.
mute it from your end? Because when they're speaking, it's disturbed. We're not hearing you.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Hold on.
Yeah, because they want to be talking to other people and then
All right, that's not. Let me see if I could. That's not. That's trying to. All right, just confirming you all hear me, right?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, wonderful. All right, I think I got you there. All right, sorry about that. Yeah. So again, back to these plants and why they do so well. Again, it's because of that environment that they have and the nutrients, etc. Yeah? Right. So moving on. Right. Again, advantages, less pests and weeds. So actually in hydroponics, we don't really have any weeding, right? Less physical labor. Of course, most of the systems are now automated. We have pumps doing the work for us. No, right, so no weeding, less water than traditional farming. So in areas that basically have very little water or access to, persons have access to water, hydroponics is a good solution, right? Because of the fact that We don't really waste anything in hydroponics. Most everything is reused and recycled back to our crops, right? Certain systems, of course, they don't recycle back the water and the nutrients, but the amount that is wasted is extremely minimal. Yeah. Again, with hydroponics, you could use a lower concentration of nutrients compared to traditional agriculture. When we plant in crops in open fields, right? What happens is that when we fertilize these crops, we usually add what we call a slow release fertilizer. So those granular fertilizers, we apply to the soil. It melts, it dissolves, and it goes into the root zone, and the plants absorb it through the roots. Many times what happens if we get excessive rainfall, etc., the nutrients dissolves very fast and it moves beyond the reach of the plant roots, right? So the plant's no longer able to get it. And it's something we call leaching, right? Meaning the plant's unable to access that nutrient because of the position in the soil. So because of that, now we have to use higher concentrations on nutrients, etc. That costs us money and time. With hydroponics, we could use lower concentration of nutrients because it's delivered directly to the roots of the plants and is made available to the plants all the time. So we don't have to worry about leaching, we don't have to worry about anything like that, and the nutrients can always be delivered directly, continuously to the plant. All right, no loss of water, nutrients, and leaching. One slight disadvantage of hydroponics is the initial. All right, so I suppose I added this, right? The high initial capital cost. Honestly, with a properly designed a properly designed low-cost system, right? It wouldn't cost us an arm and a leg to set up, right? I mean, many times we go and we see some kind of crazy prices that persons will quote you for a hydroponic system locally, right? And that's craziness, right? I'll give you an idea when we go through some of the system designs, right? What potential costs might be like for those systems, and you realize it's not that much, right? Compared to what you might be thinking. But compared to traditional agriculture, where you can just dig a hole in the ground and put in a seed and put in a seedling, you do need to purchase some equipment. But the long-term benefits will repay itself many folds over. Traditional farming, you need to bring tractors, you need to create drainages, you need to spray, you need to mold your plants, right? You need to have persons there applying pesticides almost every 2 days. If you go to some of those agriculture companies that selling those, like you see them advertising it all the time, use this pesticide, use this fungicide, that kind of thing. They will give you regimes to utilize almost every day on your crops, right? With hydroponics, you don't really do that, right? You don't need to do that. Because of that, the cost of your production long term this be a lot better. Yeah, you have to think about it long term as well too. That's not trying to meet back this thing again. Okay, good. Right, so again, hydroponics again has a shorter growth time for vegetables and in soil. So this just basically, these photos gives you an example of what soil looks like. So basically the photo to the bottom left is what we call a soil profile. And it basically gives you cross sections of different types of soil. Remember I was telling you, you have arable land and you have non-arable land. Arable land meaning the soil that is suitable for growing crops. Non-arable land is basically soil that is not suitable for growing crops based on the composition, the nutrient availability, that type of thing. This soil profile shows you how different types of soil looks. This is an example. So you can see the differences in color, texture, that type of thing. And this has a direct impact on how plants could basically grow. Yeah. The photo to the right basically gives you an idea of what a waterlogged soil looks like. So remember I was telling you, if too much sun comes out, the soil becomes excessively dry. If too much rain comes, it becomes waterlogged. And this is what traditional farmers had to go through. Yeah. With hydroponics, we don't need to worry about that again. So again, these are all reasons why the plants grow better. Again, these are examples of like diseases and things in the soil, and get into that. So in terms of hydroponics, systems basically range from small scale to commercial, all right? And it all depends on the level of production, right? So this actually my parents, and they had no idea I was ever going to be using this photo for anything, right? Far less for my presentations. But the reason why I feature them there is not because I like nepotism, right? It's because of the fact that this is the first model hydroponic system that I ever did home. So my dad is a traditional farmer, right? He grew up, he know nothing about hydroponics and thing. Way back in those days when I had set up the system, he kept asking when he see us setting up the pipes, he was like, hey, like when you're putting in the soil, because he one line is like, hey, how you putting it in there? And I was like, no, I'm not using any soil. So he was just confused, right? This is what we call a nutrient film technique, right? So it utilizes a film of nutrient solution that flows to the base of the plants. And we'll cover that just now. And that's just for those of you all who not familiar with it. But in any case, the pipes, you could see to the back of them, right? And I remember putting in the seedlings inside of there, but back then I was still doing my first degree, my undergraduate degree at UWI, right? So this is in South, all up St. Augustine in my apartment. So of course I studied system up and I had no vehicle and thing back then, right? So like moving back and forth, of course I was out of the question. So I'm not going home until maybe once every week, every 2 weeks, something. So I had to direct them now on how to grow these crops. Mind you, back then I building these things on like a student budget, which is almost zero, right? So it's like savings, you buy up some materials, and it's like, so I had no testing equipment, I no scale, digital scale, that type of thing. So basically what I did for this one crop, I had to tell them based on how much teaspoons and spoons to add, because you know, like a spoon, a normal tablespoon is like 15 grams, a teaspoon is like 5 grams, that kind of thing. So I would have estimated how much grams I needed to add based on the volume of the reservoir and directed them on how to do that over the phone. And the moral of the story is this is the lettuce that they grew. The first time they ever did hydroponics, right? And they were extremely mind-blown, but extremely proud at the same time to be able to see something grow like that. And I knew how the reaction was. But in any case, these are small scale model, right? And that's a different angle of it. And back then, like I said before, there's a real low budget system. So my frame for this thing was an old bed frame I had at home, right? The only thing I could buy for this was the PVC pipes to use as the grow channels. I didn't even have like extra cash to buy, like, you know, when you're doing NFT systems, you would use like polytubing to inject your water into the pipes, you know, grommets and that. Nah, I didn't even do that. I just use one straight piece of 1/2-inch PVC pipe and I drill holes in that and I let the water drain from that directly into my pipe. So this is as low budget as it could go. And that's also the kind of production it could get from it as well too. So the systems in hydroponics necessarily don't need to be something that's ridiculously expensive either, right? It works. Some other crops I would have grown. This is how hydroponics looks like internationally, right? So internationally, they do these things on extremely commercial levels, right? Greenhouses span sometimes acres. Everything is fully automated. They have apps on the phone that controlling almost everything within the system in terms of adding nutrients, harvesting plants, all them sort of thing. In Trinidad, we have room for that type of technology, but at this point, it just may not be cost effective for us. So we basically utilize simpler systems, and nothing is wrong with that. Yeah. Another thing with hydroponics is that it's going vertical, right? Many systems are now being designed to utilize vertical growing space because of space limitations. All right. So basically, if you look at this tower, right, it have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, about 4 rows of plants, 4 to 5 rows of plants are wrong, 10 plants up. So basically, in the space where you could grow about 2 plants, it could grow about 40 to 50 plants if you're growing leafy greens. And these are the advantages of vertical systems and these grow towers. And these grow towers very easy to utilize if you're using it hydroponically. Yeah? So again, it offers these kind of potentials. And no potential, right? So that's me there. And this is a system I did for a client, right? So I helped design and I built the prototype and it was then expanded. For those of you who live in Trinidad, this is located in the Sawa area, just off the main road, right? And basically, this was utilizing the second floor in a building, right? Now, the system was fully automated. When I mean fully automated, like fully automated, there were sensors on each grow rack, and it could have told you exactly how much power was consumed by each row. Like it was real on point in terms of the technology, right? And with vertical growing, we can also utilize vertical space, right? So if you notice, the first or the second photo, you would see there's shelves, right? And basically what would have grown there was plants, right? So you can have plants on multiple levels, right? Each one of these shelves, each one of these racks actually hosted five levels, right? So 5 levels up, 40 feet long. There are 7 in total, right? So the productive capacity of this system in that room was estimated to do, if it was doing like chive or those seasonings that kind of grow a little bit closer, 11,000 plants a cycle. Yeah, and that's one floor.
Oh, the router?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Like, sooner or later, yeah, go
Yeah.
change it.
So that was basically targeting
So
11,000
Mike,
plants a cycle, and it could have done, of course there was several floors in the building. Yeah. So again, hydroponics has indoor potential for us as well. For those of you all who may not have land, or may not have space around, if you have a small space in your house, right, you can set up a simple system and utilize a grow light or two. And you could grow your seasonings you're using in the kitchen. You could grow some crops that you utilize on as well too, because we have done smaller scale systems for this that you could utilize in your house too. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily need to be something big and commercial. Now, persons will say indoor potential doesn't have profitability for us here in Trinidad or the Caribbean. That is a myth, right? Once properly designed, I can tell you, right, and I can promise you that you could make some decent profit from this as well too, right? Because we would have done that. This is a small scale system I had out. So I kind of had this out at a display, my Agro Expo. But other than that, is our working model. So it just shows you that instead of just going with a real big system, these systems can be scaled down to almost any size that you want. Yeah, you just have to more or less just scale down. Right, so local potential, of course, hydroponics gaining a lot of attention in recent times, right? We have seen an upsurge in the amount of persons interested, the amount of projects you see taking place, governments getting involved, non-governmental organizations get involved. Unfortunately, a lot of persons are going ahead with projects with improper information, right? And they're setting up, like, projects are being set up, money is being spent, and it's not really yielding the results that they want. And it's not that hydroponics again don't work for us, but you really have to have a full appreciation for what works in our climates. Yeah. And again, we'll touch a little bit about that while we go along. So hydroponics is basically classified into 2 broad categories: open systems and closed systems. I wouldn't go too in-depth into that, but basically our open system is like to the photo to the top, what we call a drip-away system. The nutrients enters into the growing area and it is not recovered. It doesn't go back to the reservoir and pump back to the system. It doesn't do that. It just goes to the plant and it stops there. A closed system, the water enters one end, basically is distributed to all the plants, is recovered, and is basically recycled again. All right, so this is what we call a closed system. So basically we have 3 major hydroponic systems that work best for us here in the Caribbean. Those are the drip systems, or the drip to waste type systems, the nutrient film technique, and what we call the deep water culture system. So the photo to the left is a picture I took at one of our agro expos at UE. I believe this is the Ministry of Agriculture's drip irrigation system. Now, this is as basic as it could get. All right, very, very, very basic, very simple in design. Of course, drip systems has evolved over time to become way more efficient than what you're seeing there, right? But this system is simple. A reservoir of water, one with nutrients, 2 valves, you open it. Either you open the valve for the water, you open the valve for the fertilizer, both at the same time. It drains down, it flows along the length of this pipe, and it drips onto each plant. And the plants get the nutrients that they need, and they grow and they develop. You lock off the valve, you stop the water, you stop the nutrients. Now, of course, drip systems has timers in it. You have all sorts of solenoid valves and stuff that could could basically transfer where the water and the nutrient goes. It comes on when you're not there. They have drip emitters, they have drip irrigation equipment that could deliver different flow rates of water depending on the type of crops you're growing. So again, these things has really advanced over time. Yeah. The photo to the right, to the top, is a NFT system, or we call it nutrient film technique. It utilizes basically a growth channel or a pipe. Water, nutrients and it enters on one end, it flows through the pipe and it drains out on the other end. Yeah. And when it drains through the pipe, the roots of the plants gets in contact with the water and it absorbs the water as well as the nutrients. These systems are typically best suited for leafy greens, short-term crops, because of the fact that the pipes generally can't keep larger rooted crops without it becoming clogged, right? So it's suited for the shorter term crops where the roots don't really remain long enough to get big enough to block the pipes or clog it, and you harvest within 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah. So chive, celery, like your seasonings, lettuce, pak choy, bok choy, tatsao, those type of crops do well in that. The deep water culture system, which is the system to the bottom. So that photo is actually our online photo, and I decided to show the online photo so I could show you how some of our simple deep water culture systems perform, yeah, in comparison to that. So basically, the deep water culture system is a system where we have a large volume of water, like a trough, right? So let me say we have a rectangular container that's about 1 foot deep. It's filled with nutrient solution, and the plants basically float on top of that with the roots submerged in the water. The plants typically float on styrofoam sheets that are about 1.5 to 2 inches in thickness. The holes are drilled out in it. Little cups with the plants are placed in it, and the roots basically come in contact with the water and the nutrients. You aerate it, you apply the nutrients to the system, and the plants basically absorb that and they grow and they develop. Each hydroponic system type. So I just want to make this clear with everybody, right? And I think it's very important that we
She in a
understand,
meeting, I got call she in a meeting.
right? So it's very important we understand this. A lot of persons would say, you know, like this hydroponic system better than that hydroponic system. Get out of your mind, right? No one system is better than another system, and it all depends on what purpose you put in it towards, or what type of crop that you want to grow.
Kathleen, I'm a
What type of
meeting.
crop that you want to grow, right? So certain systems are best suited for certain types of crops, and depending on your situation, one type of system might work best for you, and depending on somebody else's situation, another type of system might work best for them. For instance, let me give you an example, right? Drip to waste type systems, right? Again, you will see more photos and stuff while we go along, right? But drip to waste type systems, they can be utilized for both leafy greens as well as fruiting plants, right? Fruiting plants like tomato, sweet peppers, those types of crops. Those are top heavy crops because they bear fruit, so it becomes like heavy. There's a lot of weight. In addition to that, they grow very large roots. So crops like that need some sort of anchorage to keep stable, and they also need to keep anchored because of the weight. So a drip to waste type system might be better suited for those types of crops because they want that support structure. A NFT system and a deep water culture system can grow those crops just as good. However, you will encounter certain problems now, like with the NFT, because now you have to wonder about support. You don't have the grow media to keep the roots anchored. Because the roots might be larger, it might clog the pipes. So it's not that the plants wouldn't physically grow well. It will. Not that it wouldn't produce, it will. But the drawbacks just basically dictates that we use a system that's best suited for that. If I was to grow something like lettuce, right? Of course, I could grow the lettuce in the drip to waste system, but the NFT system is extremely efficient with growing those short-term crops. And basically, in terms of cost as well too, like let me say, for instance, we're using PVC pipes and channels. One length of pipe, like 3 inch, is about $100, right? And in one length of pipe, I could grow 22 lettuce. right? Because the spacing for like lettuce is 10 inches apart, right? So in one pipe for $100, I could grow 22 plants. If I sell a plant for $10, that's $220. The pipe costs me $100. So I cover back the cost. I sell $120 in my pocket, right? So you kind of see how
Can't
things,
talk about fucking
yeah, so we kind of see,
seedling.
right? So moving on, right? So in addition to those three major systems, there are other types of systems that are done as well too, but again, it's not very suited for us. One is aeroponics, where we use what we call a mister, and we take nutrient solution and we make it into like water vapor, like a nutrient solution vapor, and this goes onto the roots of the plant. So the plant roots not in contact with a nutrient solution directly, but it's in contact with water vapor with nutrients in it. Yeah. Now, this mixture of water and air actually has shown to give plants a 30% increase in growth rate. So it's very good, but it's very easily clogged as well too, because of the fine pores that you need to create the mist. So for a lot of us who kind of go in a little bit on the low tech area, we probably don't want to go into that kind of, get into that kind of problem. In addition to that, setting up the system is a bit costly as well too, because you need to create a chamber that is more or less vapor tight so that the vapor doesn't escape and that type of thing. So it's utilized a lot internationally, but locally not that much. Okay. Then there's the flood and drain system. It's more popular at aquaponics, right? Where the nutrient solution basically flows into a container with a grow medium in it, usually something like gravel or what we call expanded clay, like these little clay pebbles that keeps the plant supported. The nutrient solution enters into that. It floods out the entire system, and then it drains. So the plant root gets water and nutrients when it floods, and when it drains, they get oxygen. Yeah, but again, it works for hydroponics, but not very popular, right? Not utilized a lot as well. And for commercial purposes, definitely not recommended, right? So these are actually examples of my flood and drain system, right? And this was some beefsteak tomatoes. So that's giving you an idea that all systems work, right? But it's just the applications of those systems will depending on what you want to use it for, commercial, home use, crops you want to grow, then you'll select the best suited system for that. Outside of that, they all work fine. And then there's the Dutch buckets. You go on YouTube, there's something that a lot of persons typically gravitate towards, because of the fact that it's simple to set up and you could grow a range of crops with it. So basically a Dutch bucket is a system like those pigtail buckets that you will see in those meat shops and things, those white 5-gallon buckets with the cover on top. Nice. You take one of that, you fill it up with some gravel, right? You wash out your gravel, you fill it up, and you drill a hole to the bottom, and you put an outlet. You hook up a reservoir with a pump, right? So if you look in this photo to the left here, there's this reservoir. There's a pump in it. The pump goes into the reservoir, and you mix in nutrients, everything you put it inside of here. And then the pump pumps the nutrients into each one of the buckets to the top. So the water flows over the roots of the plants. It goes through the system, and then it drains out to the bottom, and it goes back into the reservoir. Right, so basically water enters to the top, drains through, goes to the bottom, drains back into the reservoir, and it's like cycled over and over. So this is an example of when I said a closed hydroponic system. This is what I was referring to. The water and nutrients doesn't leave the system. And the photo to the right is a simple Dutch bucket system that I built using the same 5-gallon pigtail bucket. So I pay like $10 for a bucket. I painted it up because it was looking nicer, and also to kind of help it with the sun from getting brittle and that type of thing. It didn't really help that much, but I mean, it still looked nicer, right? Aesthetics wise. So this is how simple our system is. So I took a bucket, I cut a hole in the cover to begin with, right? And I fill the bucket with, I drill a hole to the bottom, and I put in a 1/2-inch elbow, right? And a 1/2-inch piece of pipe. So basically, this acts as my outflow from the bottom. So the water enters to the top, and it drains to the bottom, and it basically flows through this gravel. I cut a hole out in the bucket cover, so when I put it over the plant, it just rests over, right? So I don't have to worry about fitting the plant through any small space or anything like that. The little black tube in the back is what delivers the nutrient solution. Okay, $10 for the bucket, right? A piece of tube like this is about $2 a foot, right?
Look,
Let me see,
he's still on.
about $2 a foot, right? And you need about 2 foot or 2 feet of tubing for this bucket. 1/2 inch elbow is about $1.50. A grommet, well, you can substitute that for like a male adapter if you just, you know, put it in there, and that's like about $1.50. And basically that's your major cost for this bucket. And of course some gravel, right? Other than that, one piece of pipe that run along, a 2-inch length of pipe, a container or reservoir, and one submersible pump. And these are the kind of crops I was able to grow in that, right? So this is cucumbers, and next to it is watermelon, right? And they both grew perfectly fine in the system. So this 10 bucket system, it cost me $100 for the 10 buckets, right? $150 each for our elbow, right? So you can check it up. The basic fittings, one length of pipe, a small submersible pump, and a reservoir, right? And you could basically have a fully functioning 10 bucket system. And then question your arm and a leg, the plumbing for this thing is simple as well too, right? Now, let me tell you something. You go in the grocery now, and you're watching the price of cucumber. The other cucumber was selling at the side of the road for $12 and $15. Some places $10 a pound. 2 cucumbers is a pound, right? This vine now start to bear, right? So this 2 cucumber pay back from a bucket. When the rest of cucumber bear, it almost pay back for almost everything that it would take me to set up the bucket and put money back into the pump. Check that by 10. So basically, one production cycle, it could cover back your cost. And that is money that if you're doing it for yourself, you're saving. If you're doing it for business, of course, you're in business already. Yeah. So again, systems can be simple. You don't have to aim for the most expensive system. If it's one thing I want coming out of this workshop, is that somebody sees something in here that you want to utilize for yourself, and you know, you make some moves to get that going. Yeah. This is a very popular method, right? So now we're coming into the systems that has a lot of commercial value, right? Which is the nutrient film technique. And then after that, we'll cover the drip to waste type technique. So this is basically a photo of one of my NFT systems. Right. Somebody said they wasn't seeing where the water was entering. Okay, let me just run back there for 1 second, right? So the water actually entering into this bucket in this little black tubing you're seeing here. There's a 1/4-inch tubing, and this connected to a little 3/4-inch pipe to the back, and it just delivers. So you don't need no big flow of water. It's one little stream of water, and it basically just enters to the top and flows onto the roots of the plant. Yeah, nice. So back to the nutrient film technique. So the nutrient film technique is the most popular hydroponic method in the entire world, and for good reason. These systems are highly effective, it's highly productive, and it's very cost effective. It can grow a range of leafy greens, so everything from lettuce, pak choy, bok choy, tatsao, kale, all those grow exceptionally well in NFT systems. Now, I know, like, I saw recently a lot of discussions were surrounding NFT systems versus drip to waste systems and some of those Trini farmer groups and stuff like that. And you know, a lot of persons was advocating for drip to waste systems and saying, well, it's better than NFT. Nope, incorrect. What they should say is that a properly designed or improperly designed NFT system will not give you the results you're looking for, right? But properly designed NFT systems will give you exceptional results. And we have done trials and growth comparisons with lettuce in all the different major system types. And I can tell you, once the systems are designed properly, all will yield similar results. Yeah? So these are just a variety of lettuce in here. So basically, this is how NFT systems work. Nutrient reservoir. You have a pump, basically taking the water, enter into one NIA pipe, it flows via a gradient, it goes back into the reservoir and it cycles again. Of course, depending on the length of pipe, your gradient will vary. Your optimum gradient will vary because you have to look at the length of time it will take for the water to exit, and that is affected by gradient and flow rate, right? So these are some of the specific things that you need to understand when you're designing an NFT system. Unfortunately, for our climate and conditions, you will get a reference value online, but in reality and practicality, like situations, those informations don't really apply to us. So it really takes plugging into somebody or getting advice from persons who experience and who really study this thing more or less in depth, right? So this is why a lot of persons would fail at NFT systems because they didn't grade the pipe properly. They didn't use the proper pump size. They didn't use the proper reservoir size as well too. What happens in nutrient film techniques is dependent on the size of your reservoir, right? If the reservoir is small, right? So this is inverted commas, right? If it's small in comparison to how much plants are growing, the water can heat up very fast because every time the water flows through the pipes, it picks up heat, it goes back into the reservoir, and then the water in the reservoir heats up. And when the water heats up, everything is thrown off in the system. The plant now doesn't grow as well. It leaves the plant roots more prone to root diseases. That's why you get things like root rot, etc. Your plants wilt during the day. It kind of comes a little bit better in the nighttime. For those of you who doing NFTs and experience that, that is basically not just because of heat, right? But because of inappropriately designing your components in your system, right? Now, we can't go like, I mean, we almost at an hour already into the presentation, right? So this is why, I mean, we have bigger training programs. Like these are the things that we get into. But what I want for you all today is to take home that you need to appreciate that we have to, when we're doing these things, don't go and just spend your money based on what people tell you, right? Ask to, and that, like, you know, it's like you have somebody building something for you, ask to see proven and tested results. Make sure they know what they're talking about, right? Make sure that they have field experience with several farmers, not just a little demonstration center somewhere off the highway or wherever, that they're growing some crops and then saying, come and do training. But when you put it out into a farm, or you put it somewhere, they can guide you from there. You know what I mean? Because these things are very important. Now, the reason why I'm telling you that is because we don't post this kind of information online, but over the years, and I had to say over the years because it's something that's consistent, several persons would have reached out to us who would have gotten incorrect information. But let me tell you something, they didn't build a system that growing 20 and 30 plants. Right, we're talking about people who invest over $100,000, over $200,000 from ADB, right, or personal funds, because they decided to scale up a small scale model that they got training on with somebody and shared with them. And then when they put it to scale and encounter problems, right, they can't fix it because of the design, because of how it's built, that type of thing, right? So these are very, like, we need to be very mindful about when we're doing these things. Yeah. Right, so NFT systems, one of the biggest questions that persons have with NFT systems is that they always ask where's the best type of growing pipe to use for NFT systems, right? So we have locally available 2-inch PVC, 3-inch PVC, 4-inch PVC, and those 2x4 rectangle pipes, right? All works, but again, some has advantages and disadvantages, right? Now, the major limitation to what pipe we will use is the type of crop that we're growing and the pipe size. 2-inch PVC pipes will grow crops well. However, if we're growing larger rooted crops, it's very easy to become clogged. Same thing with 3-inch. And then we could go with something bigger like 4-inch, right? But again, when you're looking at economics and you're looking at cost, if a 2-inch system could work and give me the same results as 3-inch or 4-inch, it will come at less than half the cost, right? So economically, it might be better to go with 2-inch, right? If that crop could be grown well in it, like lettuce. Lettuce will grow fine in 2-inch, right? Of course, depending on the variety of lettuce, sometimes the pipes may become clogged a bit closer to the end of your cycle. So those are some things to be mindful of. But again, if cost is a limiting factor, you might want to bite that bullet and just do a slight maintenance on your system, but be able to set it up commercially using 2-inch, right? Same thing for 3-inch, same thing for 4-inch, same thing for the 2x4. In terms of growth rate and production, they yield similar results. In terms of cost, it varies widely, right? because some systems might cost you 3-4 times the amount and another system will cost you simply because of the cost of the pipe. So again, these are some things to factor in when it is you are considering setting up a system. Now, all the systems that's in here from our past projects, right? 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, and the 2x4 pipes, right? So I'm going to show you now some of the results of crops that were grown in these different sizes of pipes. So these are 2x4 system. This actually is this is on Price Club Supermarket in Shogunas. All right. So you see how good and applicable these things is to rooftops and thing. And of course, it's just part of the project, eh? It had other parts with fish tank and aquaponics and all them thing as well too. Cucumbers. I don't know if you all ever heard about people doing cucumbers and NFT hydroponics, or you even thought about doing cucumbers and hydroponics. But I'm gonna tell you something, cucumber grows exceptionally well in a NFT hydroponic system. Honestly, between all the system types, this is my go-to for growing cucumbers. The system is ideal in terms of the water and nutrient delivery to the roots of the plants. Cucumber is a water-based product. And in an NFT system, because it's a water-based system, the plant roots are never deprived of the water that they need. And believe it or not, like when you buy cucumber sometime and it tastes a little bit better, that's many times there's a reaction to water stress, like a lack of water, right? You do have that problem in NFT systems because the plant always has access to that water flowing through the system, yeah? So these are some results from using NFT systems for cucumbers, so you can see some of the crops that were grown in it. This is pak choy, so this is using the same 2x4 pipes. Right, so these are videos and stuff like that that kind of goes into design, but we wouldn't have time today. Of course, we wouldn't have time because there's a lot to share. To go through the specifics with the design, like angles, flow rates, plumbing estimations, and that type of thing. But when we go into some of the smaller models, I could get some quick estimates so you can have an idea on what it will cost you. Yeah. So 2-inch, 3-inch, and 4-inch, these were crops that were grown in 2-inch PVC pipes. So just to give you an idea. So these are 2-inch, again, 2-inch pipes. This system is 20 feet by 20 feet in dimensions. Now, if you notice, there's no walk-in spaces in between the system. So what I did, every 6 pipes, 2 pipes was built to be removable. So I would have the removable pipes out. I would walk in between the racks and plant the plants. Then I would plant the 2 removed pipes and slide it down the rack and insert it into the outflow manifold. That way, I'm basically maximizing every single square inch of my growing space. You might say, well, Rakesh, that is just 2 pipes, right? Now, mind you, in this system here, we have at least 2 walk-in spaces, right? That we have 2 pipes by 2 pipes in. So that is 4 growing pipes. Each one of them pipes growing 22 plants by 4. That is 88 plants. All right, no, that is 88 plants that I would not have had. All right. Multiply that by $10 or even $5. And basically, that's the entire cost of production for this entire system here with extra money in your pocket. Yeah. A system like this to set up, right? Using 2-inch, now you can extrapolate for the bigger pipes, right? You just have to factor in the cost of those pipes. 2-inch pipes, back then, I paid $36 plus VAT for a link at this pipe. Right? So let me just assume I pay $50 for a link, right? $50 for a link, each pipe doing 22 plants. In total, this system cost me less than $5,000, right? Because the pump to pump the system is $1,300 TT. Right, and that's the only pump I utilize for this, because what I did is I put a split in the pump as a water pump, and part of the flow adds back aeration into the system, and the other part goes to the plants. For $1,300 for a pump, 1 reservoir tank, right, and simple framework, because I use galvanized pipe fit, that cost me a couple $100. The pipe cost me not that much either. About $1,500 in total. Basically, everything costs under $5,000. And in 1 month, in 3 weeks, I was able to recap my entire investment for this and make profit. in 4 weeks, right? Every month after that is $5,000 in my pocket. And I selling lettuce less than the price is selling for right now in a 20 feet by 20 feet area. And if you're wondering, well, the plants looking a little small, and you know what? Let me show you the plants look like later down in production. The same set of crops you see in there. That is the lettuce I took from the system, right? And they actually got a little bit bigger than that when I was ready to harvest it, because you couldn't see any spaces between it. It was just almost brimming on each other, right? So you get a close up on what the quality of the lettuce looks like. This is another system that I did. All right, so I just get a little idea, a little video idea of what it looks like. So this system actually had walking spaces in between, right? Same 2-inch, right? And I did a variety of lettuce in this. Now in hydroponics, it's not recommended to do different crops together because of the nutritional requirements. It varies. But with lettuce, almost all the lettuce need the same thing. So you could do a variety of lettuce. So if it's a little home grower, then I would advise that, you know what? Put in all the different types of lettuce so you can have different things for your salad and that type of thing and grow your food. If you're doing this thing for business, still put in a variety of lettuce. Some people might want one type, some people might want another type. And guess what? They buy one type, they see the next one, or they see a third one, and they be like, oh, this is real good. They buy all 3. Right? So again, it all depends, but all grows well, right? So I mean, we're a little bit pressed with time, so just go and show you some of the results from those crops that. So this is the same lettuce. This is the same lettuce. And you want to hear the best part about this? I was in Tobago doing a project, and I'll show you the project just now, right? While the system was running. So I was crazy for like a week. And within a week, that plant went from being like medium to full size, ready to harvest. And I needed to do nothing with the system for that entire week. So while I did doing other things, I was also able to grow. And that system does this system is in here does 750 plants a cycle. So I was able to grow that while I was across in Tobago doing other things. Working professionals, this is ideally suited for you, right? Because
Hi, Rakesh. Excuse me. Someone is asking what's the space between each plant in the 2-inch pipe?
10 inches. 10 inches. 10 inches apart. Yeah. 10 inches apart. So that's how you will get the derive of the 22 for the length. And again, these 2 inches, this tested and proven. And the system is functioning for an excess of, this was done way before COVID, right? So we were after COVID, and the system's still up and running. Yeah. So again, good production. So like I was mentioning, so thanks for checking the messages from me, by the way. I appreciate it. Yeah. So this system, again, like I said before, is good for working professionals. Hydroponics in general is good for working professionals because you do have that issue of having that extra time needed to weed and mold and water and that type of thing. The system does that for you. Yeah. Right. So this is the same system, right? And that's why to have a visual of what the plants look like when it was ready to harvest. When I mean the same system, also the same crops that you know sow as well. All right, so I just shot this video right after. So you can see all the different varieties. I mean the sizes. So these were still a bit in production still. It wasn't full size. But I mean, generally you could see the plants are real good, right? And mind you, I have never used any pesticides, fungicides, or weedicides in the system. Well, of course, not weedicides, sorry. Fungicides or pesticides. I only use those as a last resort, right? As a last resort. And if I do use anything, it's the mild, safe, botanical, quote unquote, organic types. Yeah. Seen somebody in the chat. Right. How do you combat flying insects? How do you change it complete up properly? Just stop it up and keep going. Right. So in terms of the reservoir, right? You just stop up while you go along. So there's these little testing meters that you could use. Very easy to operate. It's like a little mark, like a marker, like a highlighter. You just dip it in the water within a couple seconds, it will tell you a value. And depending by how much that value drops, based on your original concentration, you just add back some nutrients and you bring it back up to the concentration that you need. And that's all you need to do for the crop cycle. All right. In terms of pests that attacks the crops, right? That is the 10% pests I was talking about, right? Now, the incidence of those, once you do proper control measures, is not that much. So those you could use simple, when I mean simple, not very harmful pesticide. It's allowed to call it pesticides, right? Because it interferes with the pests, right? But things like neem, right? Bio-neem, like neem oil, garlic sprays. You could even make your own homemade pesticides, and you use those. But you use it from, if you're using those homemade organic stuff, you use it early before you start to get pests, right? And that way, what that does, it creates what we call a bitterant on the plant. So when the plant bites or tries to suck into the plant, it doesn't taste good and they leave the crop. So you don't get infestation. If you wait till you get infestation, then you're in problems, right? So then you will be in problems. How do you deal with algae growth in the system? You ought to not have any open spaces in your system exposed to sunlight. Once you cover your nutrient reservoir, once you cover all your planting holes, you wouldn't get any algae in your system. No problem, Kimberly, you're welcome. Does the NFT system require 24-hour monitoring in terms of pH and ppm? No. So Adam, with NFT systems, when you mix a nutrient solution, depending on how much crops you're growing versus the size of your reservoir, that will determine how often you monitor and adjust. If you have a large reservoir and a small amount of plants, the plants wouldn't use nutrients at a very fast rate. So you may not need to adjust anything, maybe week 1, or even in week 2. Might need to do a slight adjustment in week 3, and then you harvest. Some reservoirs can take you straight through if it's fairly large versus how much crops you're doing. If you have plenty crops with a quote-unquote small reservoir, then you may need to do adjustments more frequently. Every other day, every day, every 3 days. So again, it all comes back down to ratios, right? It all comes back down to ratios. So
Hi,
these are...
Ratish. You had a
Hello?
question earlier, sorry. You had a question earlier. Someone was finding out the comparison between it being exposed to direct sunlight versus under a shade.
Oh, good. You see this shade house thing? I'm gonna tell you something, right? Any plant that grows well in traditional agriculture in the open field will grow just as well in a hydroponic system. The element of shade houses and greenhouses is like a two-sided sword or blade, whatever it is, call it, right? It could incur some advantages, but what persons do tell you is the disadvantages. And in many instances, under our climate and conditions, the disadvantages sometimes outweigh the advantages. Let me explain to you quickly, right? Because these are important, because greenhouses and shade houses very expensive, right? Now, one of the reasons why persons opt for like shade houses and greenhouses is that when they set up the system, they realize that the plant wilts during the day when the sun is hot. That has nothing to do with the sun being hot. It has everything to do with our improper system design. It means the plant roots not getting dissolved oxygen at the concentration it needs. It means sometimes depending on the system, if it's an NFT system, you have to adjust your flow rate, you have to adjust your gradient, you have to adjust the size of your nutrient reservoir to suit the amount of crops you're growing. And once you do that, you won't get that wilting like what you're getting. Again, the persons don't really understand these things, right? If you're dealing with a drip to waste type system and you're getting that problem, it also has to go back now to your concentration of your nutrient solution that you're mixing. If your concentration of your nutrient solution is too concentrated and the weather is hot, it has a physiological effect on your plants and it causes it to wilt because the concentration, I don't want to go too much science, sorry. The concentration of nutrients is so high in the root zone with the added heat, it causes your plants to wilt. Under cooler, rainy conditions, you wouldn't get a problem. These are things that the average consultant in Trinidad cannot tell you because they just don't know, right? Again, hydroponics is crop science, right? And it's basically the application of crop science to soilless growing systems. So somebody doing a hydroponics course or doing whatever and coming and telling you they could consult for you and they could train you, incorrect, right? They could advise you based on what they know, but beyond that, no, right? So basically what I'm trying to get at is that while we may opt to go, and while persons may try to sell you on the fact that we need shade houses and greenhouses, honestly, not for the Caribbean, right? Where you have the advantages is based on the crop type that you're growing. If you're growing a crop that, let we say, needs more shade, right? And it like, let me say, growing seasonals like shadow benny and that type of thing, that wouldn't grow well in open sun, right? So having a shade house or a greenhouse and you put like a screening over it where you basically reduce the amount of sunlight based on the percent of shade that you put in the shading material, it will be advantageous to you, right? Because you're kind of modifying your growing environment. But things like lettuce, right? Trust me, the best lettuce you're ever going and get is out in the open sun. And I could say that with utmost like 100% accuracy, because over the years I would have worked with several shade houses and greenhouses and did comparisons with that and open field with proper system, the same system designs, everything like that. The best results were always out in the open, right? And in terms of returns on your investment, many times you would realize that you spend a lot of money and you also have depreciation costs on those structures as well too. So it may cost you a lot of money to repair. Like if you had to do a change of your greenhouse plastic, just to bring back these guys to change it out, might cost you half the cost of a greenhouse. All of these things as well too. You understand? So Trinidad did have a greenhouse. How could I put it, boy? Phase way back, like several years ago, and that phased out because farmers weren't seeing the returns on investment. And next important thing too is the design of your greenhouse, right? A shade house, what persons will not tell you, and they probably don't even know themselves. You can't just go and build a greenhouse and just drop it on a piece of land because of the dimensions of the land. It has to be oriented a particular way, right, to the prevailing wind, so that you have passive ventilation to remove the hot air inside of that. If you don't, you're going to shoot up the temperature. But guess what? The greenhouse man coming to sell you an extractor fan now, right? They're going to cost you several $1,000s. Cost you money if it breaks down, but also adds to your electricity bill, right? Greenhouses should have in Trinidad or in the Caribbean a split roof design. If you see somebody building a flat greenhouse, where there is those hoop houses where you just have one complete hoop, or it built with a peak, a kind of A design, and they do pour a split, they don't know what they're doing. And I can tell you, I've seen people right now building a lot of greenhouses for persons, and they're not investing the time into designing it properly because it's cheaper for them and it maximizes profit. You must have a split roof design if you want an efficient greenhouse. I ain't gonna say you must, you can build it without it, but you had to spend money now for extractor fans. The growing environment inside that they're going to heat up because hot air rises, and if you don't have the split, you're not passively ventilating the hot air inside of there, right? And you're going to build up inside of there, and you're going to have a negative effect on your plant growth, because greenhouses were designed to trap heat, because it was designed for temperate countries where it's cold. We're in tropical environments. We need to design our greenhouses to remove heat. Yeah. So again, when it comes on to ever greenhouse, again, it's and shade houses that's a real tricky area. But again, I just gave you an idea on the reality of how it actually works. Yeah. Is there a big settlement, of course, different with the NFT and DWC system here in Trinidad? Yes and no. Honestly, the prices are almost comparable, right? And again, once you design the systems properly, the boat will run around the same cost to me, and it will yield good results as well too. Yeah. Right. So let me just, okay, I need to move faster now. All right, so I'll answer the rest of questions a couple of minutes to the end, but let me just move through here quickly. All right, so nice. Right, so we saw the NFT. So this is 3-inch PVC pipes. The moral of the story is all works well. Right, so this will show you pak choy and how nice the roots look like. Pak choy grown in 3-inch. Right, so all these my photos, of course. This is bok choy. Right, the same system. Right, that I grew the pak choy in. I did a trial with bok choy. Right, you all gotta understand. Before I come to do a presentation, I would have done trials, experimentation, did advance like on the studying and understanding these things to really get appreciation before I present information to you. Right? Most times when you ask somebody for advice or you go to a quote unquote consultant in Trinidad and it's like, hey, well, tell me about the system. You can't give what you don't have. If they don't know or they don't have the knowledge, they can't give you. They just pretend like they do, but they don't, right? What I try to do, I try to give sound advice, right? And sound information. So the same system I used to grow the pak choy, I would have then done bok choy. I would have done a different variety, like cucumbers and different. So you're testing the same system with different crops. And that don't happen in 1 day or 1 week. It happens over the years. So I can tell you that this design will work for you, depending on tell you what crops you could grow in it as well too. Because I would have first done that. And you see the photos as evidence. Another thing, the photos speak for themselves. It gives you an idea of an appreciation of the results, right, that you get, right? So that you don't need to make the mistakes to do the things that don't work, right? So these are the most important thing. Like I always tell persons that who interested in our training programs, like the bigger programs, right? We have like for home growers and commercial producers, right? And those come at a cost, right? Of course, like it's not a big cost, but at a cost. And I always tell persons, right? Let me say I do a home grower course, right? For 500 or 300, or I do a commercial course for 1500, right? There's differences in the kind of investment in terms of time that we put into it and how we deal with you and stuff. But in any case, let me say you do a training course, you do the big course, 1500, right? What I will teach you in that course for 1500 could save you several $1,000s in your life into hydroponics, because you will learn all the common pitfalls upfront. You will learn how to troubleshoot systems upfront, and the value in that. If you're doing a system growing 3,000 plants and you make an error in the first month, you can say, yeah, well, I make an error, I will get right in next month, right? But guess what? 3,000 plants times $5, so 3,000 letters times $10. You realize how much money you lose out there. The cost for that cost is 1,500. So it would have paid you back way much more in returns. In addition to that, if you make an error, most times you don't know what is the error. You don't know if your reservoir too small. You don't know if you dissolve oxygen too low, right? And you keep working by trial and error, and trial and error costs us time and money, right? And again, why I decided to run this free course is so that I wanted to give you this free information, because this will help you to make informed decisions now when you're going out there, right? Because people charging your money to go into basic courses and you still won't learn anything like this, right? So I just want you all not to fall into, because recently a lot of persons have been reaching out to us because they invest money into systems that are not working properly, and they have to recap their money, and they're doing training programs and they're saying they're asking the instructors questions and they're just deferring them, and they're just teaching them basic online information, right? And it coming at a cost to you, right? So if you decided on doing a training program with somebody, drill them for information, right? Real drill them. I mean, it's easy to sell. Like some of these guys are real good at selling, but guess what? They sell, you invest, and you lose your investment. I don't way to do that, right? So again, sorry, these are some of the results from these training systems. This is pak choy to the left and what we call tatsoi, right? You all know what tatsoi is?
No clue.
No. So tatsoi is like a leafy green as well too. I don't even know how to describe this thing, but I think somebody click. I'm gonna see if somebody know what this thing is here. Oh, yeah, John, no problem. Yeah, so tatsoi, well, this thing bigger. Well, I can see my hand, right? So again, I just kind of use my hand for comparison. And right, so again, tatsoi is like a type of, I would call it a type of pak choy. I don't know if I describe that properly, because it's the same type of leafy green type of thing, right? Very nutritious. And again, it grows beautiful in NFT systems. What is NFT? Yeah? Like beautiful in NFT systems.
Rakesh, you had a question earlier about the type of nutrients that they would use in the that we would use in the NFT system.
Right. So what you want in the NFT? Now, nutrients fall into two broad categories. Those that are suited for leafy greens and those that are suited for fruit and plants or fruit and vegetables. The major difference is in the NPK composition. Now, fruit and plants need certain micronutrients and they need certain major nutrient elements in higher proportions. So it's actually more critical in when you're growing fruit and plants that you formulate a nutrient solution specifically for that versus leafy greens. So in leafy greens, you use your hydroponic fertilizer, which is your quote unquote NPK, right? You use calcium nitrate, you use magnesium sulfate, and you use trace amounts of iron. You mix that together, you apply it into your system, and you could grow your crops. Now, depending on the type of crop that you're growing, right, you will either increase the concentration of nutrients or decrease the concentration of nutrients. So each crop has a certain concentration that it grows best at and a certain ratio of nutrients that it grows best at. Yeah. So basically that is that with respect to the nutrients. I mean, of course, we could go a lot more in depth. Right. So fruit and plants, for instance, if you're doing like tomato and you're growing things like tomato, you're growing things like peppers, right? You want to make sure that your nutrient solution, depending on the stage of growth of the plants, you want to add either more magnesium, you want to add either more potassium, like magnesium and stuff. Calcium, I think, for instance, is good for like tomatoes. It helps prevent something called blossom end rot. So you want to make sure that those plants has higher proportions of that. It's not that important with leafy greens as it is with fruit and plants. So again, that thing about nutrient formulation, it kind of specific to the crops that you're growing. But all in all, right? All in all, when you're purchasing your fertilizers for leafy greens, make sure you get a leafy green formula. For fruit and plants, a fruit and formula. And it is specified by the companies. They actually do produce a leafy green and a fruit and plant to target the different crop types. Yeah. Right. So these are pak choy. Right. That was good in that. Bok choy. Right. Now, I mean, I sure I know about bok choy, as we see in bok choy all over the place, right? There's like $20-some a pound dependent. Sometimes they sell by the heads. But bok choy grows really well in NFT systems. In some of my bok choy, you can see the size, the quality, no pesticides, right? There's some more tatsoi to the bottom. There's kale, right? And there's one of the specialty varieties of lettuce. Can you share your contact information? Yeah, I'll share my contact details and stuff at the end, right? So everybody will have it, and whatever questions I miss out, I'll try to get answered. Right. So these are all crops grown in, of course, NFT systems. So, like you see, many people selling 2x4 pipes, right? The 2x4 rectangular pipes. Let me tell you something. Those pipes are good based on the surface area that they have at the base because it's relatively wide, so you got a good spread of your roots. However, the dimensions are 2 inches by 4 inches, 2 inches high, 4 inches wide. That 2 inches does determine the size of net pots that you're growing. Certain crops need more room as well too. Certain crops will mash up your 2-inch net pot after the first cycle, right? Like pak choy, tatsoi, them things will push out a net pot. And then if it mash it up after your first cycle or two, you have to buy back a next one. So it might be better to go with a 3-inch net pot and a 3-inch PVC pipe. So don't just take wholesale that 2x4 pipes are better than 3-inch or better than 2-inch or better than 4-inch. It all comes back specifically to what it is you're growing. Yeah. So again, more pictures are lettuce. Right, these cucumbers and 3-inch. Right, let me run through this a little fast here. Right, so you can actually see the quality of the cucumbers on this. Now, this system was actually the nutrient solution I used for this wasn't hydroponic fertilizer. This was pumped from a nutrient reservoir that came from an aquaculture system. So this is what we call aquaponics. Yeah. I mean, of course, definitely we're not going to have time for that today, but aquaponics is everything in hydroponics plus growing aquatic organisms, fish, crayfish, and that type of thing, and utilizing water in a sustainable manner, utilizing nutrients that derive naturally in a sustainable manner. So you can basically grow plants naturally, quote unquote. I want to use the word organically. I'm in an aquaponic system. These cucumbers were grown aquaponically. It cost me nothing in terms of nutrients for this. Yeah. But again, it could get similar results with hydroponics, but it will cost you, and it will also not be quote unquote organic or naturally grown. Yeah. So that's the cucumber. So that's the kind of harvest that I got from that. And of course, I bagged this thing up, right? And that went for sale. Now, I do my PhD in UE, I teach in UE, I work at, I also lecture part-time in UE as well too, by the way, right? So some of the newer courses that they have on, like for those programs that they have, I would have built that for UE. I also lecture at Costat as well, by the way, right? So I do have, like, most of the tertiary level organizations do hire me to come and do stuff for them because of that level of expertise. But honestly, I like to, like UE and thing, yeah, you could go and do programs and thing in the universities and you could get degrees, you could get qualifications, but it's not tailored very much for practical applications. So like, let me say as a student at UE, when I go to teach UE, you have specific course outlines that you need to fulfill. And it doesn't really give you like that, they had to teach like the science behind it and thing, you don't get that. I just always incorporate my practicals into it. So my students well equipped. But generally, when you do programs at universities and stuff like that, it do give you that kind of hands-on practical dimension to it. These training programs that I run, I take all the expertise that these master students and everybody, because I teach at that level as well too, does, and put it in a practical format so you get the best of the best. So you can be able to do this thing with a proper scientific background. Okay? And anyway, so these crops were grown. So back to my little story here, all these things bagged up. Guess what? That done selling you already, you know. Time I walk into campus, right? Everybody, like let me tell you, once I say I have cucumbers for sale, that gone for sure. Because the cucumbers you're growing from these systems is taste way better than the ones you're growing in soil. Right? It tastes better. And I'm just saying that when you do it for yourself, you go understand what I'm talking about. So people is all like customers like, hey Rakesh, when you have cucumber, when you had this, when you had that, the products are sell for themselves. Right? Once you grow it pesticide free, you grow it in these types of environments, it tastes good too. Yeah. So again, good business you have to do out of this. And again, you don't have to set up a real extensively big system. You can start small, you can scale up, right? Again, you can start small, you can grow some, you eat some of it, you sell some, you could share some, you could do whatever you want, but you could start your business very small and grow it organically while you go along. Like what I did, right? I kind of grew into hydroponics and aquaponics and them kind of things throughout the years. Start with small systems, you take whatever you need to consume at home, and I sell the rest to friends and to them lecturers and thing in UE, right? And when you show them healthy growing, they know that they're eating healthy, so they will pay you all the lecture money as well too. Yeah. And you could grow a business like that. Anyways, so Mama tell you when I was in Tobago and I had my lettuce growing, this is the system I went to build in Tobago. So this client, she's a school teacher and she did the commercial program that we had. So she was all set to grow. She was fully equipped with the information. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. But of course, she's like she couldn't build anything. So she called me up. She's like, hey, Rakesh, you need to come to Tobago and set me up. I was like, sure, Keisha, no problem. Because her goal was to supply the supermarkets with all the different varieties of kale. So what you're seeing there is all the different, like a whole set of varieties of kale. Dinosaur kale to the far right in the corner. Red Russian kale, curly kale, all them sort of thing. In case I went across there, I set this system up for her. She get into production, she making money. Right? So that's her husband there. And I mean, they included 1 or 2 little lettuce in between, so they had that to consume at home.
Hi,
And
Rakesh.
the
Sorry.
businesses, yeah.
That's the question I wanted to ask in terms of mixing similar leafy greens. Most of your examples, you had one leafy green on the entire system, but I wanted to ask the possibility of mixing greens with probably similar nutrients level on
Right.
or requirements on one system. How can that work?
Right. So when it is you're mixing, when it is you're putting in different plants into your system, right? Just hold 1 second, eh? Let me call it back, right? I'm not training course.
Oh, all right, okay.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, take care, bye. Right, sorry. She's Ethan. I've clients call him as are reachable at any time when there are issues and stuff like that, right? So anyways, so outside of that, right? When you are targeting crops, if the crop has a similar nutrient requirement, definitely can put them together, right? If they don't, then I would not advise it. things like lettuce and pak choy, two common leafy greens. I would not advise mixing them together. Pak choy needs a concentration of about 1200 ppm, lettuce about 800. So the difference in while the formulation may be the same, the concentration of nutrients will vary. Right, the concentration will vary, and you want to target the concentration specific to the crop you're going to get the best results. Yeah, if you have a small home system, right, and let me say you have a 20 plant system or a 25 plant system or 10 plant system, you could mix up plants in between. Right, it's not the best, but because it's small quantities of different plants, it don't really pose too much of a competition with each other. But if you have a system doing 200 plants and 100 is pak choy and 100 is lettuce, the dynamics changes. They kind of go in competition with each other. But a smaller little system, you wouldn't really get that going. And you could get away with mixing up with another side, a little celery. Like I have small scale models that I build and supply small scale home gardeners and stuff with. And they're very excited and they grow all different types of crops together. Sorry, I do like I won't even have the time to go and pull up them pictures to show you. Right, just to show you what I'm talking about, like a small system doing like using 2-inch PVC pipes. Like I have a guy right now, and he growing mint nut, he growing pak choy, he growing this thing, what do you call it, Swiss chard. So you could do all of those things together, but for commercial purposes, keep them separate. Okay. Red Russian key. So these are to show you some results. I mean, this couple very excited. Well, let's get show us there for the photo ops. But this is a couple system, and of course they ecstatic with the production, and you can see it's healthy, nice plants. Right now, if you was to do this on a drip to waste system, it could become problematic because of the fact that these plant roots now, when they bind the cocoa peat or your growing media, is very difficult at the end of your production cycle to clean. So persons advocating for drip to waste systems, what they do tell you is the after servicing of these systems, getting all the grow media out your plant roots, because everything is matted after that. In an NFT system, you pull in your plant straight out of that liquid, you pull out your net cup, you rinse it, you sanitize it. If you need to, you drop it back in the system within minutes. Right? Drip to waste is a completely different story. I hire people to come and help you clean up and too because it's time consuming. Right? So all these things they need to factor in when you're going into commercial production.
Rakesh, you mentioned here about sterilizing. Do you need to like clean out the pipes and so on? Or do you just
It's recommended that after each crop cycle, you clean out your system. So you spray out any dead leaves, any leaves that stick onto the pipe, any roots that stick onto the pipe, that type of thing. In addition to that, you could also use a sterilizing agent. So things like bleach, right? Bleach is the simplest, most cost-effective. But even using bleach, you need to know how to apply bleach. You need to know the concentration, your contact time. So persons can tell you, hey, add this into your system, and then you add it in, like, let me say your plants get disease, like they get some root disease, like root rot, right? Caused by certain types of Pythium species, that type of thing. So you get root rot. That is a common problem in NFT systems. And then...
that thing blanket?
Sorry? Yeah, right. So let me say you get root rot, right? And so that's a plant disease. You get that, it affect your lettuce, you take out your lettuce, you wash along your system, you apply bleach in the concentration that was recommended, and then you realize next month you get root rot again, and you keep getting the problem on and on, right? So just sometimes you have to understand that it's not just about putting bleach in your system. It's not just putting a certain concentration. It's the contact time. You have to look at the concentration of the bleach that you're looking with as well too on the market. Sometimes the concentration varies, right? Depending on how hot the sun is as well too, you have to let the bleach air dry from the system, right? If you don't leave the bleach for a certain period of time, like let me say supposed to leave it half an hour and you leave it 20 minutes, and not going to get the sterilizing effect that you look for. So sterilizing is also a process as well too, right? That you have to understand. When it comes to biological organisms, depending on the type of disease you get, you may need to use a higher concentration of bleach. There's no one fit suits everything kind of scenario, because you don't want to use too concentrated when you could use less concentrated. Yeah, so you want to, like, so all of these things are important to understand when you're sanitizing your system and stuff as well too. Yeah, so when you're sanitizing, always do background research or get the correct information on how to sanitize. Yeah,
after every crop you have to sanitize.
I would recommend it. you don't necessarily need to, because if your plants are totally disease-free and you grow lettuce month 1, you can plant back and you grow plants in month 2, right? But if there's a chance that the plants may have had a disease or there was disease plants, then don't knowingly expose your new plant state. It's like you had a cold, right? And a partner or a friend come and it's like, hey, keep a distance, like a sniffling. That's a normal thing, like people do it all the time. That's because, you know you have something, but you don't want the other person to get, right? It's like that with your system, right? If you know the system, like you have a problem before, don't put your new plans through it because they're going to cost you time and money. But if you're good and somebody go, hey, handshake, bounce, hug, kiss, that type of thing, right? The same thing. If nothing wrong with the system and you're confident that you're good, you can plug it in back again. You don't have, you can wash it out. But you don't want to run a bleach through it. You can just put back your plants. And I do that, right? I do that, right? So you don't necessarily have to sanitize something, right? So
okay, and that brings my next question. As
Mhm.
it relates to water, is it the water supply? Is it something that you have to basically hook up in terms of run the pipe into it, or how do you go about doing that?
Right. So yes, with an NFT system, sorry, I feel in this question because there's a learning experience for everybody. Because these are really good questions, right? All right. So the water is connected through to the back of the system, right? Actually, I'll get a photo just now and I'll show you the water is connected to, right? But the water, there's a reservoir to the back of these pipes in the ground. There's a pump in there and it pumps the water to the top of the racks. And then the water flows down via a gradient into this return line and it goes back into the reservoir to the back. So you can't see it in the photo here. But there's a reservoir pump and it pumps it up into the top of the lines. Yeah. All right, so I got a whole up on questions there for now. Already, the questions are really good questions, but we're very pressed for time, and I apologize for that. But as you can see, it's a lot of information, right? So there's that same system you see there, right? One it in production. There's mule lettuce. There's some different varieties there. That's bronze lettuce from that same system. Oh, by the way, this system, it occupies with walking space and everything, 35 feet in width. That's what walking space on either side, walking space in between, 35 feet in width, 20 feet in length, and it does 535 plants. So let me say you are a commercial grower and you want to get a nice, decent system to work with. I would advise to get a unit like this, a 500 plants a week. You do 4 models independent of each other. So there's a 2,000 plant. I mean, I'm not telling you how to do your business, right? But I think a 500 plant unit is good for one system. So you do that week 1, you do 4 of that. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. If you want to make more money and you want to double up, then you do what? You repeat the design again. So you do another system. You don't join it on. So that way you keep them in units that you have independent control over and you just scale up accordingly. So you could grow from 500 a week to 1,000 a week to 1,500 a week to 2,000 a week by multiplying the units. Yeah. And again,
I know you're strapped for time, but just let me ask. I'm a new to this. So for example, I have a kitchen garden.
Right.
And my garden is like roughly like 53 by 22 feet area. Is it recommended that I do the vertical or horizontal? And if I'm to do the vertical or horizontal, which one allows me to grow variety? Because taking into consideration, I may not be doing, this is not for a commercial purpose. This is just my kitchen garden.
Okay, good. So let me answer. All right, so I know exactly where you're going with that. And let me tell you, do both, right? Vertical systems, like if you use those stackable planting systems or use those vertical towers, they are very suited for things like chives, celery, those seasonings, right? When you go to grow lettuce on that, you don't get, you see the nice full head of lettuce seen to the right, that bronze, you don't get a nice full head at all. Those better suited for horizontal systems where they have room to open properly and face the sunlight. So if you want to grow things like leafy greens like lettuce and pak choy and bok choy, I would recommend you go with a nice small unit, like what we have here, like a nice NFT system. You want to do your seasoning like parsley, chives, celery. You don't need to go flat for that because I don't have nice heads to form, right? It's seasoning. So you could do a vertical system and you could put in a little corner and you can get all the seasoning that you need in one little space. Yeah. So that's the best way. Integrating, I always am an advocate for integrating systems. I do ever say just go, especially for home growers. Yeah. Sorry, I had to keep running on now here, right? Because I pressed on plenty for time. The A-frames. So you could take like a normal NFT system that's horizontal, like what I have here, and you can modify it into an A-frame design, where it is kind of wide to the bottom, taper to the top, so that you don't get shading from the top level to the bottom, and you're maximizing your space. So this is an option as well too if you have limited space for a home garden, right? So basically, I'm going to run through this real fast, right? So these are reservoir, small and simple system. The pump in it in the barrel, it pumps the nutrient solution from the barrel to the back of the rack. And this is where the water enters to the rack, right? Or to the pipes. In that black little tubing, and it flows down the pipe, and then it goes back into the nutrient reservoir, right? So that is the answer how the water enters. So that's in them little black tubings. So these are actually instructional videos. So like in our bigger programs, one of my instructional video is an hour in itself, you know, giving you full details and breakdown on the systems and stuff. So of course I can't play that now because it's, of course the class really supposed to be an hour. So all these again are instructional videos. I'll skip through that. Right, so that's for NFT. Deep water culture systems, very briefly. These are simple system I built and designed home by me. This is using recycled greenhouse plastic. The frame that I used to build for this trough was wood that I got from a sawmill next door. Me and my dad, we framed it up. We put in the greenhouse plastic. This system measures 20 feet in length, 4 feet wide by 16 inches deep. And it was able to grow 300 plants. I did a combination of fruiting plants as well as seasonings and leafy greens. So depending on the type that I wanted to grow, I space the holes accordingly and appropriately, right? But this just to give you an idea of all the different crops that you could grow in a deep water culture system. By the way, the nutrients for this was from fishes, right? So this was technically aquaponics, right? But the same thing applies to hydroponics, right? So to the back was this thing, tomatoes. To the front, you're seeing parsley, mustard greens, pak choy, celery side, you name it. Right? So all these crops could grow in a deep water culture system. Right? So I just run through some photos here with you all. Right? So these are the foreign pictures I had before. Right? So, you know, we see things online. I was like, hey, look how good it's looking. But we don't really, it don't appeal to us because it's not local. Let me show you local. Let me show you how simple the system set up. The way you're watching here is 300 plants, right? Wood as the frame, right? Recycle wood and recycle greenhouse plastic. I double it up, I make my frame, buy some styrofoam, plug it in, boom, in production, right? All these plants you're seeing is these same little plants, right? It's from the same production cycle. Right, so these some clients. So when I do my bigger training, we do have practicals and stuff where you could come and touch and see and feel and whatever, right? So this guy, a client, comes like pick up the scythe and you can see how nice and healthy it looks from the deep water culture system before and after. So I just showing you before and after shots, right? Spinach before and after, mustard greens before and after, lettuce, right? Shadow benny, right? More shadow benny. Parsley, right? You can see nice and healthy. The parsley is tomato. And well, other crops all together at the same time. And that's from the horticulture systems. After I did that one system, I went on an upscaling system. So I went on a 30-foot one now. And I didn't use so I started to work now, right? So I was able to purchase like blocks and I built a trough that was 30 feet long, 4 feet wide. And this was doing close to 900 plants. 900 seasoning, right? So let me specify. So the spacing was a little bit closer. But these some plants that are putting into it. There's some scythe, right? All these were grown in that system. So that's me there holding up some scythe from the deep water culture system. So imagine you're growing in a 30-foot trough, right? That you're growing close to 750, 800 plants like that, right? So it's real good. It's a good deal, yeah? And these other plants, of course, too, were grown from it. There's that trough, there's plants from the deep water culture system, drip to waste systems, right? These are simple layout of a drip to waste system. Drip to waste systems, again, there are many variations to the design. You could use larger containers for larger type of crops. So they could use like grow bags, grow buckets. That's 3 gallons, 4 gallons, 5 gallons in volume to grow like tomatoes, peppers, that type of thing. And then you could even use PVC channels, cut out a strip from it. You could use guttering, fill it with the cocoa peat and the perlite, or you grow medium, and you could grow the shallower root, the smaller crops with shallow roots, like lettuce, pak choy, chive, celery, that type of thing, right? So I'll just run through some crops with you all that could be grown in this. So these are different tomato. All these from drip to waste. So these using grow buckets. Cherry tomatoes, which you know very expensive, right? Sweet pepper, that type of and these things expensive, eh? And again, simple little grow buckets and you're growing these things in a drip to waste system. Anybody can tell me what that is?
Pumpkin?
Nope. Guess again.
Is it watermelon?
Nope. Guess again.
Zucchini.
Pumpkin.
Somebody said zucchini.
Yeah,
Right?
zucchini.
Zucchini. So these are 3 different varieties of zucchini. Believe it or not, zucchini does extremely well in a drip away system. And these, I talk about high value stuff here. So these are flowers in here. Actually, when I put together this particular slide, I didn't include it. Like I had the zucchini being after, and I never included it back into my folder and put it in. So sorry, I can't show you what it look like. But I'll forward a picture to show you, right? How nice is zucchini grew in the system. And watch me, a bucket like this, like you will get a grow bag. We usually retail grow bags. I would do something like this for like about $15, right? And or you could use a grow bucket, like let me say use a 3 gallon to a 5 gallon grow bag or grow bucket, and you're growing these plants comfortably, right? And again, like just 1 zucchini, 2 zucchini, you'll pay back for the bag. Right, and then you have these things to last you years. Eh? These little buckets you're watching, these 3 gallon buckets with the grow media in it, and I have these things. These were some of the first set of equipment that I buy, and up to this day, them things are outside producing for me. Yeah.
Do you have to use any special nutrients? Because I tried growing zucchini here already in my kitchen garden, and for some reason it didn't block the flower and everything grow, but I never got
It comes back, yeah. So that is totally nutritional, right? Totally nutritional. So there are certain nutrients and micronutrients that are needed, and you have to know when to apply it. Because it allows for proper fruit development, flower development. Sometimes you notice you're growing plants and then it's flowers and then the flowers drop off and you don't get fruit bearing. Again, that is what we call abscission, and it is caused by a lack of certain nutrients as well too. Sorry, well, like I can't go into all of that today, but it's just for you to so I'm glad you asked, so now you know, and it's nutritional. It's had nothing to do with the growing system. Yeah, so these are a real good point. Everybody had to understand in hydroponics, it is growing without soil. There's no base nutrients available to your plants. None. Cocoa peat has no nutrients. So your plant is 100% dependent on you to provide it with what it needs. If you buy a fertilizer or you apply nutrients and it lacks micronutrients that the plant needs, it's going to lack that 100%. In soil, you don't have a problem because there's certain base nutrients in soil. So if you don't fertilize the soil, you still get some production going. In hydroponics, if you miss something, that's a day. Completely, your plants miss out on it. When you're dealing with fruit and plants and fruit and vegetables, when you miss a certain micronutrient, like what you now mentioned, you're dealing with a fruit and like the zucchini, and that plant don't get the micronutrients, or you don't get or the formulation is not suited for that crop, then the plant not going to get that nutrient and you're not going to get proper fruit set, proper flower development, nothing like that. Yeah, that is why, again, it's important to get proper guidance and training, because even so, you had known the proper thing, you would have get fruit, and you would have get back more, you would have get that, you could have use it, you could have sell it, and it would have pay you back. It don't make sense to grow a crop and you can harvest nothing. Yeah. Right. So just moving on. So yeah, so
Before you go on, question. Did you have issues with diseases and pests?
Diseases, yeah. So in this instance, no, but I'm not saying that you can't, because it's also environmental as well too. Depending on your location where you grow crops, you can have a high incidence of pest and disease, or you can have a low incidence of pest and disease. Fortunately, where I grew my crops, I did not. but it can have pest and disease like you'll get aphids, whiteflies, those types of things, right? But here's why I would advise.
Don't we mildew and powdery mildew? Because I know that
hardly because hardly. And again, it comes back down to now understanding when you water and how much water you apply to your system and stuff as well, because moisture and stuff is the foundation for these diseases spreading and proliferating.
yes, it is.
With system. So time of day as well too. When is your last irrigation period? All these things is very important to understand. So it's not just idea you water your plants and stuff. When you water, it could also help with disease suppression and thing as well. Yeah. So again, so I had a speech here, right? So these are some okra that we grew from a dripped away system. So yes, okra can grow as well too. You can see the results. That's the burgundy, the red okra, the green okra, all them thing. This is modifying the dripped away system to utilize the PVC pipes, so you could grow like seasoning and leafy greens and thing. These some interns I had from UE at our facility coming to get some hands on. These are nice little model that you could utilize in your home garden, right? So these that when we're now filling up some cocoa peat and perlite in it, these that when it plant up, and these later down in production. You understand? So again, I have shade houses, you do trials to see what could grow good, what can't grow good. And I can tell you what that percent shading, celery doesn't do well in that percent shading. Right? I think that's more of a 40%, 50%, some is a darker shading. Right? And again, all these are different types of seasons. We do different trials, so you can tell you what works, what doesn't work, that kind of thing, right? But you can see for kitchen garden, watch me, this little thing fitting up, that's what, 4 feet in a little corner somewhere, and you could sell seasoning from that, trust me. And everything you want, chive, celery, parsley, you name it, you're growing it at a different level. So yeah, see some different pics of that same pipe system. A vertical tower that you could use, also drip to waste. There's some parsley from one of my systems. So drip to waste, you have other types of equipment to use. So in drip to waste systems, we have different pieces of equipment that are best suited for different designs, right? Of course, I can't go into that as a whole training, a couple hours training session by itself. So yeah. So you have different pieces like valves and fittings and connectors and those things. These are nice integrated system that I have for a home garden. Where we have like vertical systems to the top with horizontal systems to the bottom, that type of thing. I recently did a real nice drip away system that's solar powered. So if you want to go off grid, that's an ideal model to work with. That in itself is a whole component of one of our bigger courses where we go into that design and layout and all them sort of nitty-gritty kind of stuff, right? But as you could see and you could appreciate, we just learn a overview and look at the kind of time we run up. When we go specifically, that's why like our bigger courses, we go over 5 days and we run it for a couple hours, like 3 hours and thing a session, and we go deep into these designs and thing. But this course, like this program today is really for you to understand what you need to factor in. Get that basic foundational knowledge so you can make an informed decision and when you're moving forward. Right, so all these is instructional videos and stuff like that. But in any case, these before and these after. Yeah. Right, so these are next type of drip irrigation equipment. So instead of having the tubing on the ground, these have emitters built into them and you can run it on top of your pot. Yeah, or on top of your grow bags. And it will drip on each one of your plants. Right. Again, these are a video of like explanations of the different components, how to integrate it, that type of thing. So this alone is like a little while. So I can't go through that now. Again, this is our next design showing you how to like all the components connected together with your timers and that type of thing. Pro media. So right, so this video will show you how to mix the cocoa peat and perlite. So basically cocoa peat comes in these, let me just give you a basic run through. It comes in blocks. You dissolve it in some water, you add in perlite at the recommended ratios, and then you just add it into your grow container and you can put in your plants into it. So yeah, so that's how cocoa peat looks like, that's what perlite looks like, the thing you mix it in. And in hydroponics, you have different equipment. So you have like net pots where you put your plants in, meters to test your nutrient concentration, you have your water pumps, that type of thing. In terms of plant nutrition, Your fertilizer supplies your macronutrients, those needed in large quantities, and your micronutrients, those needed in your smaller quantities. Both are essential. So it's what we refer to as essential elements. In terms of essential elements, you have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, sulfur, magnesium. And in terms of your micronutrients, you have iron, chlorine, manganese, boron, zinc, copper, molybdenum. And your hydroponic fertilizer will have basically a combination of micro and macronutrients, so your plants gets all of these. Yeah, and each has a role and function to play in your plant. If your plant is lacking a nutrient, you can actually visually tell what it is based on how the plant yellowing, at which point in the plant it yellowing, that type of thing. But of course, we can't go fully into that today. That's plant nutrition. And again, that is standard plant nutrition for any type of agriculture, right? So this is why crop science, again, has a big role to play in hydroponics. It's not just specific to hydroponics, yeah? So like I was telling you before, depending on what the plant's lacking in, it will yellow a different way. So plenty times you can tell you, hey, your plant lacking iron and it lacking nitrogen, but sometimes it's magnesium. All depends on how it yellowing, at which point, if it's older leaves, younger leaves, in the veins, outside the veins, on the margins, that type of thing. Yeah. Your nutrient formulation for hydroponics, you need your NPK or your hydroponic fertilizer, calcium nitrate, magnesium sulfate, iron chelate. When you mix those together, you get everything that you need. Yeah. So you could either get fertilizers coming in liquids, or you could get coming in solids, right? So one you just take and you add by volume, one you take and you add by grams. Of course, the one you add by grams is way cheaper. The one by volume, they just sell for the hobbyists and people who like to use liquid, I put 2 ml and you're done. Right. But they'll jack up the price. The salts, almost the same thing, and you're weighing it, but for whatever reason, it's a fraction of the cost. Yeah. And it works beautifully. Yeah. So we have like testing equipment that you will use to test your water, like to know what your concentration of your nutrients is, what your pH, that type of variables and stuff like that you want to maintain and monitor. There's equipment for all of that. So you don't need to figure this thing out. Hydroponics very easy to do once you properly know what you're doing and you have the right equipment. And the right equipment not expensive, right? But it's just proper use of it and your monitoring protocols and stuff, and you could have your system running predictably from start to finish. Yeah, and that brings me to my end of what's supposed to be our 1 hour presentation. All right. So yeah, so I do hope that this was informative, informational, and beneficial to you. And I hope you got some valuable information that you could use in moving forward. All right. And I would just like to say thanks to everybody who attended this workshop. To attend this, it took time and effort on your end, so I appreciate that. And I hope that you did learn something from it. I do apologize that I can't take everybody's question tonight. Oh, thanks so much for all the great comments. While you are at it, for those who are on Facebook and would like to just, drop a little comment, a little review on the review section. I'm going to open setting up a populating my website soon. Like I have a website, aquaculture.com, but it's not really fully developed. And I have a review section here. But for now, like if you're all on Facebook and you'd like to leave a review, please do. Right? It will help me in, moving forward with business and in life. But it will also help. And why I particularly would like all to share all the experience as well is because I want, as this is a free informational workshop, I want people to know that, information doesn't have to cost you a arm and a leg. It just being in the right place at the right time. But, persons could seek it out and they could learn something from it. Yeah. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. I will follow up. I know some of you all would have reached out to me about our paid courses, like the more extensive ones. Now, the purpose of this program today was not to talk about that, right? But just before we go, for those of you all who were interested, I will send an email with some of the details for those of you who may be interested, so you could reach out back to me. And And of course, if you have a random question in between, feel free to just shoot my call with or without doing a course, right? There's not a problem, right? Just probably not tonight. I have an next appointment. I actually need to go and sort it with the guy who had come from before. But yeah, outside of that, I will send some of that information. So again, so what I try to do, right? For my training programs, for the commercial training courses, as well as the small scale home growers courses, they're both very informational, but just one is more tailored to home gardens and designing systems for that. So like you see, you would see certain models and stuff like that. In those courses, we will actually go through like the design, the estimates. And I will work one-on-one with you now to design your system for you at home. So for instance, if you want to do like, you know, someone was asking earlier about where's the best a horizontal system or vertical system, right? And those courses, like we will go into a design and say, hey, you could do a system doing 20 plants. You need 3 lengths of PVC, 2-inch. You need this how you cut the hole. This is spacing and that. These how much nutrients you should use. Your reservoir need to be 20 liters. I'll even measure the amount of nutrients you need for it as well too, and tell you how to go about doing it, like that kind of thing. So that's what we do. That's why it's at a course, because it's really very like it is much more in depth. The commercial ones, we work with the we work with you individually and one-on-one sessions outside of the program, and we help design your systems, and we also provide equipment to you at reduced costs as well too. So, and from those programs, if you want to get like PVC pipes and stuff, I have an account in the major manufacturers in Trinidad. So when it is you need PVC items, and it, like we make those available to you way less than what you will get in the hardwares. Yeah. So even after like you buy equipment, it could probably cover back the cost that you pay to do the programs and stuff as well. So this is just for those of you all who are asking about it. I just, you know, giving you some insights into what those things would be like. So again, you could feel free to reach out. I'll provide some more information to that. Also, what I will do, seeing that these are fairly big class here, I think I would run a special class. When I mean special, not a different class, but one with just us in it at a reduced cost. Following from this training program, I'll use this as the introductory lecture, and then we go straight into the system designs and everything like that, and we start to work out estimates and layouts and that type of thing. Right. So I will send some follow-up information, and of course that will be at a fraction of the cost of the regular cost. So I'll do that, right? Just for us. So I'll send that out strictly via email. So yes, I'm gonna keep back everybody. You all do have
Rakesh, sorry, just before you go, again, I'd like to join with everyone and express our gratitude for the information that you shared today. But I have 2 quick questions. I think 2 or 3 quick questions. Yeah. In one of the first layout you showed, there was a air stone and an air pump.
Right.
Is that only essential for like the larger system? Because I want to experiment with a vertical system for my home, and I didn't take into consideration anything concerning air. So I don't know if that's only essential.
Air is particularly important for NFT systems, the liquid-based systems, right? So the thing about it, we're in a tropical environment, and what happens is that the oxygen is like a lot of the primary delivery system for the oxygen is through the liquid, the water. And if we don't aerate the water, it doesn't hold the concentration that is required for the plant roots. Now, if we do like a drip to waste system, then we don't need to do that, because the water only drips onto the plant, and the porosity, the pore spaces in the grow media will have air in it. So you don't need to worry about it. If you're dealing with an NFT system and you're considering having an air stone and an air pump, you still don't need it, depending on how you design the system. What I typically do, right? Like if I design a system and I have like my reservoir, I usually design and I include a slightly larger water pump, and I do what we call a bypass in the system. So I create a side flow, and I design that side flow to jet into the water to create aeration. So it replaces having the need to get an air pump. So the extra current, the extra money is not really is saved with respect to that. But like a nice vertical system, which is a drip to waste, like a tower or a stackable planting system, you don't need to aerate that solution.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'll experiment on doing that split system that you talk about there.
No problem.
Gratitude again for the suggestion with the reduced cost for us here. I wanted to ask, I know you said you have a different course for those that want to pursue it commercially and for home growers, but
Right.
you might have persons in here like myself that we're not set on a path just yet
Right.
as to whether we'll do it exclusively for home purposes or we might want to scale
Oh,
up
that's
for commercial purposes. So if there's like a middle ground, that would be good also.
no
If you have
problem.
that offer, right?
Right. So I appreciate that's a very good thing. So if you're in the middle ground, then I would assume it could do either one of the courses, right? If the I mean the difference is like a couple $100, I would recommend you just do the bigger course one time. Because it will give you the exposure. If you do the smaller course, then no problem. If you want to do the smaller course and you want to do the bigger course after, then I will just subtract the cost of the smaller course from the bigger course. So you just pay the difference. So you don't necessarily need to do two courses like you pay money twice if you understand where I'm coming from. So if you're undecided and you're in the in-between, do the smaller course. You want to get more information and you want to go specifics into the commercial aspect and you want to start the design systems and build to scale and that type of thing, then yeah. Then we could do the bigger course after. So yeah. So that is something to consider.
Okay, just to understand also, I don't know where we can get more information on your courses because I just happened to see this advertisement today on Facebook and decided, oh wait, this is today. Let me see if I can still get a spot. I just happened to see this today because I've been doing so much research on hydroponics.
Right.
But so I'm not sure where I can get more information on your course.
I will send some more. I will send some more information. Yeah.
You keep saying dollars, but I'm from Guyana, so I'm not sure if you're referring to US dollars or TT.
Oh no, that's TT dollars. That's TT dollars.
Okay.
That's TT dollars.
All
That's
right.
TT dollars. That's TT dollars. So don't worry. So we get like regionally, like Guyana, or like when I do online programs and thing, like it's surprising how much business on Guyana. Like I heard so much people from ministries, from the the University of Guyana, some lecturers from there do my programs. Right now, yeah, so it's a lot of persons, a lot of interests, and I think getting relevant information out there is very important. I mean, my Facebook page is really not bombarded with too much information simply because I just real strapped with time, because of my other commitments, but trying to free that up to designate everything straight into the private sector, like you all, and help get your businesses and stuff up and running. Because I think now it's very crucial that we able to grow food sustainably and things. So definitely I will send the information. But here's what, you could also WhatsApp me as well too, right? Or WhatsApp my contact, right? I'll send an email with all my details, but it's a 109. This is our business number, 4662709. You could WhatsApp to that number or you could call our number and just say whatever information you need, and I could provide additional information as well too. Yeah. So with that being said,
Good night. Can I just quickly, I know you're pressed with time. I share some of the sentiments that the young lady shared earlier. I'm a little bit farther because I'm all the way in Belize. And I saw it as well on Facebook and I was very much intrigued. And now I'm even more motivated. So my question is, should I want to participate in the full course? How feasible would that be for me in Belize?
Feasible, very feasible, because the kind of time and effort we will go through, like let me just tell you, right? I teach these, I deliver these programs different, and why I say different? everybody have an identity in my classes, right? For instance, we do the classes, we go through systems, we go through designs, right? Let me tell you what I do for clients and stuff like that. Sometimes a client might know, like, especially the ones who are abroad, like for you and Belize, like, let me say hooking up a system. And it's like, hey, Rakesh, I'm hooking up this NFT, but I'm not sure where the line had to go in, like how it connected, that type of thing. And let me assume we didn't have anything clear cut in the session showing you that component of how to do it, right? And let's use an example. I will go back to our system and I will do a personalized like video tutorial on how to do that. And you have access, like, and that's yours, like WhatsApp that to you. We go on live and we discuss it, video call, that type of thing. So you have that type of, so it's way more than just come and get a session. This is not kind of UE thing or a university thing and do a class and try to figure things out on your own. It don't work that way, right? So it's very feasible, and we have been doing this for a while now, ever since we've been running online programs. And we have a very good success rates. Like I have clients also from Guyana and stuff, and I have this one client, Paula, and she's so excited. She sets up her own NFT system from our tutorials. Send pictures from day one until harvest. So both of us monitoring her system every day. So I could say, hey, look at Lucky Little Nitrogen, adjust this here, little video. So that you definitely don't need to worry about.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. All right, so I definitely do need to run now. So again,
Rakesh, will you
yeah, question?
will you be sharing the recording?
I'll share some information from it with you all, but
Yeah, Rakesh, will you be sharing this recording?
yeah, if you need to get access to any of the information from the recording, just let me know. I may not distribute the entire recording, but just reach out to me and I could organize something for you. Yes, so any other questions? Okay, good. All right. So what I'll do, when I will upload the recording and I'll make it and I'll share a link for it so you'll be able to access it. Yeah. I think that will work out much easier. Right. So I will do that. So if you need access, so just WhatsApp me on that, and I will share the link for you so that you can access it as normal. Yeah. All right. So you all do have a great night, and it was a pleasure. Take care.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Beautiful session. Have a blessed night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.